Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Welcome to the Skift India Travel Podcast. Today, I'm excited to have my colleague from Skift Research, Varsha Arora, to discuss about the short-term rental market in India. Varsha had recently also filed a report on the potential of the vacation rental market in India. Thank you for joining me on the podcast, Varsha.
Thank you so much, Peden. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Varsha. Varsha, as we all know, you have written in your report as well, vacation rentals are in a very nascent stage in India. And of course, it represents a relatively very small segment of India's hospitality industry. However, despite the very small size that it is, you have suggested in your report that the short-term rental market has significant potential. You've cited Booking.com's report as well that points out to a surge in demand for alternative stay options. Earlier when we were covering Make My Trip earnings, Make My Trip has also talked about this whole potential of this sector of alternative accommodations and how they are also focusing on it a lot. Of course, a big reason is the fact that the Indian hospitality market is largely underpenetrated. I mean, like we've talked about it a lot. I think the Accor CEO, when he was here, he talked about it. A lot of people have talked about it. And since there is a shortage of hotel accommodations in India, this definitely soars up the demand for vacation rentals. And as you can see, how Indians are traveling. So could you elaborate on some of the key factors that are driving this growth?
Sure, Peden, sure. Before I start, let me just put it in context by giving the numbers. I mean, giving an idea of the market size we're talking about. So, Skift Research had done an accommodation sector market estimate in 2022, in which we had projected that the vacation rentals will be as big as like a $1.3 billion segment in the Indian hospitality sector. Now, I mean, this was 2022. A lot has obviously changed since then, and if we sort of just preliminary analysis from our end, if we put in the GDP tourism GDP growth rate to it, we're gonna we're gonna be looking at around a $3 billion market by 2033. So that's just to set things in context that that's how big we are expecting this industry to become. Now, as you rightly said, it is not a very big chunk of it, right? We had done a survey dedicatedly on the Indian market, on the Indian travelers last year, in which we found that 62% of them are using hotels, but only 7% are, sort of opting for vacation rentals for their domestic trips. Now, talking about the potential reasons of why we are so bullish on vacation rental as a segment is clearly, as you pointed out, the under penetration of the market, right? So let's just talk about the supply demand dynamics here. On the supply side, as you rightly pointed out, the undersupply. Now, there is a significant deficit of hotels in India now. Why I'm only talking about hotels here is, as I like again referring back to the survey, that's the biggest chunk that people prefer opting for domestically. Now, hotels is highly under penetrated, and there's a crazy undersupply here as well. Again, just to give you some numbers here, if we compare ourselves to China, which is almost equally populated, almost equally advanced as India, we have around 2.6 hotels for every 100,000, 10,000 people. And then if we talk about China, it's almost less than half the quantum we're talking about. So, and again, I mean, you also mentioned you had spoken to a core CEO, and I was just recently reading his interview, and this stat actually was pretty striking for me. The top five Indian hotel companies combined have around 1,000 hotels, while the top five leaders in China have around 25,000 hotels. So, I mean, you can just see the comparison of an equal sized economy, and you see the difference of the hotel share. So, and I mean that's the supply story. But now, if you talk about demand, and if you only talk about the hotel demand now, which is obviously representative of the entire industry, we have seen occupancy rates, RevPAR, and ADR all three going up. Obviously, there was a dip in 2020 because of the pandemic, but post that, it has been increasing, all three in tandem, which again indicates towards a robust demand in the country. So that's the supply demand dynamics of the hotels part of it. But again, this like another angle to it is the demand for vacation rentals. Now we have a tool called Skift Travel Health Index. Skift Research has this tool in which we sort of map out the recovery rates. We used to map out the recovery rates till last year of each and every segment, and now we are doing a year on year kind of comparison on how these segments are growing globally. So India is obviously one of the markets, and we saw that this increase in vacation rental usage is not a pandemic dependent phenomena. We saw hotels and vacation rentals both recovering, and till date they are sort of recovering in parallel. So this this sort of phenomena is here to stay. Is what the outcome is.
Yeah, and also the fact that of course, vacation rentals are give you a lot of flexibility. I recently spoke to Amit Damani, who's the co-founder of Stay Vista. Stay Vista says that it claims to be one of the largest villa rental operators in India. They have about, I think, 850 properties spread over 50 destinations in India, and they are mostly located in these tourist destinations, popular tourist destinations. And they also spoke about the fact that it gives a lot of flexibility. People are now people would want to travel with their family, and Indians always travel with their families, and families would entail parents, kids, grandparents, right? And then of course sometimes the extended family as well. So these places, alternative accommodations, also give them that very much needed me time that they that everyone talks about. But since you mentioned the core CEO, one and we are speaking about the supply and demand, and how India market is hospitality market is largely underpenetrated. He also highlighted something. He was speaking somewhere, and we had covered that. And it was very interesting that he spoke about the fact that on an average, to open a hotel in India takes about 6 years, whereas in Europe it's 3 years, and in the US I think it's 2 years. So that itself says a lot, because of the whole regulatory challenges that they face in India. It's very difficult to open a hotel. So even if you say that you want 1,000 properties by the end of this 2030 or something, you may get caught up in that regulatory trap. So, as a result of that, I think the conversion of existing villas and bungalows into rental properties has become a kind of a practical solution. So, could you, since you've talked about it in your report as well, can you explain, how that can be to the advantage of the market?
Totally, totally. Agreed to the point that you made. In fact, I was just to complement what the core CEO mentioned. I was reading somewhere that India's hotel supply is low, but it is also very, growing very slowly. Now, just talking about 2023, India added around 14,000 rooms, while China added around 1 lakh 7,500 rooms just in 2023. So again, look at the difference. That's how slow the rate is to fill the gap between the supply and demand here. So yes, I mean, if you talk about constructing a hotel, which a requires a lot a hefty investment, B requires regulatory, approvals at every level. So there's a huge, long list of processes that you need to follow. But at the same time, if you talk about, vacation rentals, it's quite literally as simple as converting an existing villa or a bungalow, which might be owned by anyone, to a rental property, right? And we have, I think, as a customer, I've seen a huge increase in, people buying second homes, because it's becoming relatively easier. And also post pandemic, people have this tendency of, having an option of at least going to a place where, if needed, they can just, sort of exclude themselves from the entire population, if
The far
I
from
can
the
put it that
madding
way.
crowd.
Yes, exactly. So it's become a trend. And I
Yes,
mean,
correct.
just talking as an example about, what exactly they're doing is, Lohono is supplying the properties and is provide sort of maintaining them and putting them in the vacation rental market. So the entire, it's sort of streamlined and it's becoming very easy. And obviously that's pretty advantageous for the market, because this is sort of filling in the gap for the undersupply of hotels.
Correct. And Varsha, also interesting is that, during the discussion that we are having, there are so many names that we can think of now. Of course, established brands like Airbnb and already there. Then there is in India, if you just look at it, there's Stay Vista, there is Saffron Stays. And then there are these, the hotel chain brands like ITC has developed something called Story. Taj has something called Ama Hotels. And of course, earlier in the year when Vikram Oberoi was there at the Skift India Summit, he also talked about this concept of nature hotels. I mean, from what he was saying, I could infer that he was also talking about these very small, key properties, which would be, but that would be more, in not a Delhi or a Bombay kind of a location, but somewhere tucked somewhere, which you mentioned, far from the madding crowd kind of a concept. So, and it's quite fascinating that there are so many branded chains that are now entering into this, into this particular segment. So, and when I was speaking to Amit said something very interesting that earlier when the hotels came about, it was the brands were first developed, and then the booking channels came in, right? I mean, you had a map, you had the Accors, and then you had the booking channels like Make My Trip would help you book a Marriott property. But with vacation rentals, it is these properties were already there, but the when you brand that property, when you brand it as a Stay Vista or a Saffron Stays, or it becomes an Ama Trail Hotel or an ITC Story. So that kind of the involvement of these big names can help a lot in changing the consumer perception and the trust factor towards vacation rentals as well, right? Because these are properties, because this is not like if you don't like the property, then you just leave and then you go to a different hotel or something like that, because these are mostly properties that are located in faraway destinations, and you can't just if you don't like the property, then you can't just go somewhere and look for another hotel or a villa to stay in, right? So could you talk a little bit about the involvement of big hospitality names and the chain properties and this change in consumer perception?
Yes, sure. So I mean, this is something that intrigued me as well, and I had just put a timeline to this as well in my article. If you see, there's a simple chart or like a graph that shows how and when these brands entered the market. So Airbnb entered back in 2012, which was just sort of the infancy stage for vacation rentals in India. And then later, domestic brands like Saffron Stay, Stay Vista also entered in 2015, 2017. And just before the pandemic, I think slightly got their timing right, entered Ama Trails, which is sort of a subsidiary of IHCL, which is the big one of the biggest brands, hotel brands in India. Then Lohono and Isprava's business model entered, and now we're talking about IITC and, as you mentioned, Oberoi also getting interested in this space. Obviously, I mean, the business models per se are different, right? But if you look at it, these brands collectively are looking at the same audience. Now, when I go to booking.com and I'm looking for a vacation rental in Goa, there'll be an Ama property as well. There'll be Isprava as well. There is obviously Saffron Stays and Stay Vista. So, from a consumer point of view, all of these stand equal to me. Obviously, price points are different, luxury levels are different. But again, the point is that they are catering to the same audience who's looking for a vacation rental in a certain place. So, yes, these brands coming to the fore is sort of, solidifying the market, if I may put it that way. People are taking it seriously, it's becoming a thing. And I mean, just again, like, just to give you a stat here, Airbnb's OTA traffic, hotel OTA traffic in India, it was making up around 2% back in 2016, and now we're talking about a 13% share in the hotel OTA traffic in India for Airbnb India. So that again, to your point on how the booking channels were the first movers here, and now the brands are coming up, which is sort of a vice versa case if you compare it to hotels. So again, that also relates to how easy it is to get these bungalows and villas online, because we already have the logistics set up. It's quite literally like branding them and presenting them to the audience.
Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Correct. Interesting insight, Varsha. And what I was also, when I was reading your article, what I also found out is you have also highlighted this shift in travel preferences post pandemic. And, you've spoken about how these changes have specifically impacted the demand for vacation rentals. And you've spoken about how millennials and Gen Z, which is the main travel cohort that now we talk about, they are leading this trend towards short-term rentals. So while you were, because we've been talking about the fact that the growth in ADR and booked room nights for these alternative accommodations is twice that of hotels, right? Which tells us a lot about consumer behavior and preferences as well. So, what are some of the unique needs and preferences that you found out about these generations when it comes to accommodation?
Sure. So I think it's generational, of course. So I'm going to talk about it in a bit. But the second angle, I think, to it is the big family travel market in India. So let's talk about both. Let's start with this millennial Gen Z culture, right? Now we know how big this segment going to be in India because of the demographic dividend, right? We know the majority of the earning population in the coming years will be in the 20 to 40 age bracket. Now, if you compare it to the Airbnb users in general, so this is from a Bernstein report that 58% of Airbnb users are in the 20 to 40 age bracket, which is exactly the massive proportion of population that is going to enter this age bracket in India. So I mean, yeah, just compare. It is exactly the audience that this vacation rental market should be looking at. and India has that in abundance. So it's sort of like, just like a puzzle that's fitting together, I think. So I mean, also Airbnb. I had interviewed Airbnb India head on email, and he mentioned that 85% of their first-time bookers in 2022 were Gen Zs and millennials. So that's again one something that says a lot about the kind of audience that this vacation rental market should be looking at. Now, why? Why is that this segment is primarily our audience? Because of obviously a few reasons. One is authenticity. We know that this new generation, or so to say this particular age bracket, looks at authenticity. They are, especially again, like especially it's a post pandemic phenomena, that they're wanting to have authentic immersive experiences, which would take them to the root of the place and just let them maybe take a piece of the local culture there, and just get the vibe. If yeah, I think that's the right word to put here. That's, just getting the vibe of the place is what these people are looking at. Then again, the second part, I think, is that this age bracket is increasingly getting conscious about the environmental harm or the environmental impact that travel or hospitality can have. And this modern traveler is increasingly conscious. So staying in a local homestay obviously means supporting the local economy and community directly. So again, that also links back to the usage of vacation rentals in such places. And the third, I think, it's not only a Gen Z millennial phenomena, but overall in India, there is a social media influence, right? Uh, there's a rise of Instagrammable spots and destinations, and people are sort of, it might be a negative to say, but there is a herd mentality in India, right? So it's literally word of mouth that works here. So one is the social media influence, and then there's a basic tendency of people following other people to, try these vacation rentals and post their pictures on Instagram. So that's again like another trend that I think is driving the demand for this. And the second point that I mentioned earlier is on family travel. I mean, that's huge in India, as we know, because of the cultural integrity, I think. So I got this very interesting stat from the Airbnb India interview again, which is that they had experienced 110% year on year increase in family bookings back in 2023 as compared to 2022. And I can validate with this India survey that we did last year. Approximately 80% of the travelers in India travel with their families. So that's a huge, huge chunk of market here. And I think that these short term rentals or vacation rentals is the perfect fit again, because you're sort of looking at a villa or a bungalow where the entire family can stay together. They have amenities to their service like kitchens, multiple bedrooms. These places are obviously child friendly and also accessible for senior citizens, etc. So I think that's the correct product for this market. And there's a very recent tag that IHG, I think one of the big hotel chains, I'm forgetting the name, but they have actually put in um, a sort of a symbol on bookings which says if there are interconnected rooms available, those properties will be highlighted. So now you see how the need of the family travel is being catered to, right? So I mean, even the brands are trying to cover that, and I think short-term rentals organically are a best fit for this market.
Absolutely, Varsha. And what is most important while highlighting this is that maybe for a broader audience is that when we say family travel, it doesn't just mean it doesn't just mean parents and the kids. It in India it usually involves the grandparents, maybe the siblings, and a lot of other people. So it doesn't really mean four people traveling or just six people. So sometimes it can be 12, sometimes it can be 14 people traveling together, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, we know how big Indian families are, so and also I think right, and globally as well, I think multi-generational travel is something that everyone's talking about, right? We are actually even skipping the mid-gen, and the grandparents are traveling with their grandchildren. So yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenon globally as well, but especially in India because of the cultural tie.
Correct. And, that's because that's how Indians used to travel earlier as well. I mean, like earlier in the 80s, I guess, when people used to travel, it was usually the travel was, nani ka ghar. That's your maternal parents, grandparents' house. And that is when you met your cousins. So that entire thing is now being replicated through these alternative accommodations where your aunts and uncles and everyone can come in and everyone can enjoy, and just it's just that you don't have to stay in somebody's house. This is something that everything is taken care of, so you don't end up doing a lot of work as well. Not a lot of work for the others, right, for the elders.
Right.
Varsha, of course, we've spoken about the audience. We've spoken about how vacation rentals are growing in popularity, and of course, you mentioned about Instagrammable locations, and we see that these vacation rentals also cater a lot to those social media influences, because that's where you need. If you are not in social media, then perhaps you're not there. That's the concept now, and it's increasingly so in Asia and this part of the world. But with the rising interest in these off the beaten path kind of destinations, and then there is this concept of solo travel. While there is family travel, there's also a rising concept of solo travel among the Gen Zs. So, how can vacation rentals kind of leverage these trends to expand the market? And can you also share about how vacation rentals are trying to cater to this demand for responsible travel practices and immersive experiences? Because of course we hear a lot. There are surveys that say that, oh, Indians are very conscious about how they travel. They are very conscious that they do not, because of course in India we have to be more with it. I think if you see how climate change has affected any country, I think India would be the worst right now. We've seen temperatures shooting up in Delhi. We've seen landslides. We've seen a lot happening in this part of the world. So I think we also need to pay attention to responsible travel practices while we talk about immersive experiences.
No, totally. Yes. So a couple of trends here. One is, of course, the off the beaten path destinations that people are wanting to go to. Now, to capitalize on this, um, I think we all know that people prefer using vacation rentals, and in fact, even the supply is in off the beaten places, right? So if you talk about Goa, they will not be in the main Candolim area. You'll find very few vacation rentals there. But if you talk about the interiors, maybe in Bagator, which is again off the beaten destination for Goa, you'll find a lot of vacation rentals, because obviously in the main touristy spots, the hotels have already captured that market. Now to penetrate it further, STRs, short-term rentals, of course, one are in terms of space, etc. They only get to make their properties or convert these properties in off the beaten areas. That's one. um, and how they can leverage it is that this in again, linking it back to the customer. We are talking about this Gen Z millennial segment. Now they are wanting to explore these different destinations, right? So vacation rentals can obviously target these travelers by promoting their properties in less known scenic locations, offering unique and memorable experiences away from the crowded tourist spots. So that's how they can capitalize on this trend. And then of course, there's a huge market for solo travel in India as well. It's come in late here, but now it's picking up a lot. Airbnb had actually mentioned in one of their press releases that solo travel in India has actually doubled compared to 2022. So again, showcasing a growing market segment here. Now, again, vacation rentals is off beaten. They are in off the beaten places, but also how you can package it is for the solo travelers is that you highlight the peace, the solitude, and the flexibility that these properties offer, and that's exactly what the solo travelers are looking for. So I think for these two growing trends, it's all about these vacation rental providers packaging their product in a way that they cater to you know, these two segments. Because essentially, as I before also said, organically, these properties are in such locations that they organically just cater to these two segments. So it's all about, packaging them in the right way, using the correct words to attract these customers. And then I think third is family travel, which we already spoke about. That's again a big market that they can sort of capitalize on, and on unique and distinctive accommodations. Again, we talk about hotels. We know hotels. There's a typical setup. There's a reception. There are rooms, which obviously there are different categories of rooms, but in a way, it's a standardized product, right? But when we talk about vacation rentals, they have a variety to offer. They can be houseboats, they can be tree houses, they can be farm stays. I mean, there is so much that they can offer. So this is again something that they can sort of capitalize on, uh, just to lure this segment that we're talking about. And now to get to your point on the conscious traveler, I had mentioned, I think, in one of your when I was answering one of your questions, that people are getting extremely aware of the kind of impact that they're having, and our India survey showed it as well, that they are looking for sustainable stays. They are looking for accommodations which have a low carbon impact. So again, this vacation rental segment automatically caters to this need as well, because one, their carbon impact is lower than hotels, and also the connect with local culture and community, right? We are essentially again talking about a bungalow being converted to a rental property. So you are catering to the local economy per se. So it sort of serves the environmental and the S of ESG here as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's how this entire vacation rental segment is supposed to
Mhm.
capitalize on these trends, and it's quite literally playing on their the positive parts of it and just capturing this market.
Correct. And thank you so much, Varsha, for the insights that you've shared with us today. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I think there's a lot that I have learned about the vacation rental industry. Thanks to this conversation with you. And one thing that I noticed, when Amit spoke to me, we spoke about regulatory challenges for hotels. Taking 6 years to open a hotel in India. But for vacation rentals also, there is a challenge in the sense that there is a lack of a clear national policy on homestays or alternative accommodations or vacation rentals, whatever we might call them, because he said that each state has its own regulations, which is creating confusion. So there is a need for a standardized national policy to provide clarity to everyone, everyone who's involved. So thank you very much for this discussion, Varsha. It was really great talking to you.
Thanks so much, Piran. It was a pleasure. I mean, obviously, this is a growing segment that we're talking about. It is commanding a lot of popularity in the market. And overall, I would say it is here to broaden the horizon of the entire travel and tourism industry in India. It can obviously capitalize on the sentiment and preferences that are changing and evolving here. And yeah, I'm hoping to see this take shape, because it's eventually going to be a big contributor to the travel and tourism domestically and in.
Correct, and I think India needs it as well, because if you need to accommodate the growing number of domestic tourists, then you surely need to have enough infrastructure to house them. Thank you everyone for tuning in to the Skift India Travel Podcast. Be sure to check out Varsha's article for more in-depth information on this topic, and don't forget to subscribe to the Skift India Travel Podcast in your favorite listening app. Thank you. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform, please subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave a positive review. Your support helps us spread the word about the Skift India Travel Podcast and ensures we can keep bringing you free content every week. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated whenever a new video drops. Thank you for your support.